The clock is ticking on a possible government shutdown. The U.S. government runs out of money at midnight on Tuesday if lawmakers cannot reach a deal to keep the government open. With just a few days to find a compromise, President Trump and congressional Democrats are locked in a stalemate over the GOP's current government funding plan. Federal workers, meanwhile, are bracing for the potential government shutdown and the possibility of mass layoffs. Joining now to talk more about this looming shutdown is Max Cohen. He's a congressional reporter for Punchbowl News. Max, great to talk with you about all of this. Let's start here. According to some sources, Speaker Johnson says he may keep the House in recess next week, even if government funding lapses on Tuesday. That's not, as we understand, historically what usually happens in these situations. Can you break down what the tactic is there and what it can mean for the House Speaker?
Yeah, this is all about House Republicans playing hardball here. Of course, last week, the House passed a continuing resolution to fund the government for 7 weeks. And now that measure went on to the Senate, and Senate Democrats killed that. So for Speaker Mike Johnson, his perspective is, we've done our job in the House. We've passed the bill. Now it's the Senate's turn. So by keeping his members on recess, he's trying to force Senate Democrats to fold here and support this Republican plan. Of course, as you know, those Senate Democrats say they're going to hold firm and reject that bill unless there are major health care changes to that bill.
All right, government moving closer to a shutdown to take place at the end of the month. Could have a big impact on economic data, for example. Emily Wilkins joins us now. She has more for us as we take a look at the countdown clock. Emily?
Hey, David. Yeah, that countdown clock is going. It will be here before we know it. But look, a shutdown is looking increasingly likely. 4 days can be a long time in D.C., but right now, both sides have just very much dug in. Doesn't appear to be really any serious negotiations going on. That means that we could be headed into the first major full government shutdown since 2013. Here's what to expect. First of all, if it begins on Wednesday, goes till Friday, don't expect any jobs data to come out on Friday. You can also begin to expect delays for company certifications, slowing down the process for companies to go public. And this is a big one here, the whole no pay for federal workers and contractors. You know, the last shutdown we had, it was a partial one. It began in 2018. It delayed $18 billion for compensation, purchasing of goods and services, those salaries included in there. And that was an impact found by the Congressional Budget Office. And plus, since U.S. national parks and monuments are also going to be shut, the U.S. Travel Association warning that the travel industry, airlines and rail could lose $1 billion for each week that the government shut down. Now, that's what's happened previously, but this time there is a new wrinkle. The White House threatening massive government layoffs that could impact hundreds of thousands of employees. Now, it's not clear at this point exactly how many agencies would be impacted. The guidance that was given to them is basically to not reduce workforce for programs that are in line with Trump's priorities, but it raises the stakes for what a shutdown could mean for industries and for the economies. Guys?
Okay, Emily, thank you very much. To just discuss, and first of all, thank you. Love having you here. I know you're a straight shooter. I want to get your thoughts on Chuck Schumer. He was on another network talking about the shutdown, and again, he's making the argument that, listen, this really is about Trump, and it's about the Republicans being recalcitrant. Listen to his sound, get your reaction.
Donald Trump said, ignore the Democrats. So I think this really comes from Trump. And they're afraid of him. We haven't seen them buck him. Even if you hear chatter in the gym or as the members talk to each other that what Trump is doing is wrong and bad, they don't buck him. They don't buck him. And he thinks he's king.
As people would say at my barbershop, y'all just scared. That's what Chuck is basically suggesting. Is he right or wrong on this?
Well, listen, the Republicans want a balanced budget. We want to keep the government open as well. But the Republicans have been negotiating since January. Susan Collins, the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee, has negotiated 90% of the federal budget that we're responsible through her committee. It's passed out of committee, oftentimes 23-2, 24-1. So Chuck Schumer is the one that's setting on those and won't let those go across the finish line. And really what he's done, he's taken a hostage here. His hostage is he wants $40 billion a year of extra subsidies for Obamacare. And those were set up during Joe Biden COVID era, and we've said enough. COVID is over with. We want to move on. And by the way, 70% of those extra dollars are actually for people making over 4 times the poverty level. That's not right.
That's not right. And also, as the president points out, Senator, I, as an American, it's certainly my right to say to my leadership in Washington, I don't want to pay for surgeries for some groups. I don't want to pay extra for things that I don't believe are, frankly, in my interest. Here's the president talking about it on Friday and the possibility, or dare I say likelihood, that a shutdown is in the offing.
The Democrats want to shut it down, and they want to shut it down because they want to give billions, ultimately trillions of dollars to illegal migrants, people that came into our country illegally. Some of those people are criminals.
Is the president right on this? And then I want you to put on your sociologist or psychologist hat. Why would the Democrats want to do something like that? Because Americans say, don't give money to people who have no legal right to be here in the place of Americans who, frankly, could use the help.
Yeah, look, I think we need to be compassionate. I want to make sure everybody gets adequate health care, but who's paying for it? And again, this is one more consequence of this open Biden by Joe Biden. But I want to emphasize here, what we're asking for is a stopgap measure on funding that Democrats agreed to. Just last December, every Senate Democrat voted for this budget. This is their budget, what they requested, and they want another $1.5 trillion on top of that. They're not being reasonable. The ball is in Chuck Schumer's court. I think he's been given a very reasonable alternative at this point in time as well. And again, this is all about these $40 billion of subsidies on the ACA as well as the Medicaid expansion, those types of things from the Obamacare era.
And they want money for PBS and other things like that, too. A lot of Americans say, listen, they can make their own money.
Welcome back. We are less than 72 hours away from a shutdown of the federal government. Republicans are seeking a clean, continuing resolution to keep the government funded and open, while Democrats want to extend subsidies for Obamacare. They are set to expire at the end of the year, as well as relaxing new rules that make it harder for states to enroll illegal immigrants into taxpayer-funded health care. The Office of Management and Budget has instructed federal agencies to prepare for a permanent, massive downsizing of government staff during a potential government shutdown, specifically targeting employees of programs that are not legally mandated to continue. The possible move comes as the national debt is at a record high, $37.5 trillion, with interest alone on that debt of over $1 trillion, in large part due to the $7 trillion in new spending under the Biden administration. Joining me now with the latest on where these talks stand is the Speaker of the House, Congressman Mike Johnson. Mr. Speaker, great to have you this morning. Thanks so much for being here. What are you expecting? I know you have an important meeting at the White House tomorrow. Do you think you'll be able to avoid a shutdown?
Well, I certainly hope so. The purpose of the meeting is so that the president can assemble the four leaders, the two top leaders in both chambers, to come in and have this discussion. And I talked with him at length yesterday about this, and he's going to tell Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries to stop playing political games. What's really important to point out here, Maria, I'm glad you mentioned the national debt. The statutes in federal law require Congress to do 12 separate appropriations bills every year. That's the only way to ensure stewardship of taxpayer funds, to spend less money and make government more responsible. The problem is, as you and I both know, and we've lamented before, Congress hasn't really worked that way in a long time. Typically, instead, what we have is a giant omnibus spending bill at the end of the year because the can is kicked down the road all the way to that point. We've been forcing the muscle memory back, Maria, and the good news is we are at great length, great effort. We've got Congress to work again. The House Appropriations Committee did great work. They did 12 separate appropriations bills through the committee. 3 were passed off the floor. 3 bills are passed off the Senate floor. They don't match exactly. So for the first time since 2019, we have an actual conference committee between the two chambers to work out the differences. All this is working very well, but we need more time because the end of the fiscal year is September 30th. So what do we do? Logically, we passed a continuing resolution, a simple, very clean, 24-page continuing resolution to keep the government open for 7 more weeks so the appropriators can finish that process. And what did Chuck Schumer do in exchange for that? He declined it, they voted against it, and he said, no, instead, I want to add $1.5 trillion in new spending to a 7-week stopgap bill, and I want to, as you mentioned, we want to reinstate free health care to illegal aliens paid for by U.S. taxpayer dollars. We want to claw back the $50 billion that we passed, Republicans passed, in our big, beautiful bill, the Working Families Tax Cuts, to provide for rural hospital and health care, and a laundry list of other partisan priorities. He knows it's a non-starter. He's trying to, quote, show a fight against Trump, and it makes absolutely no sense.
All the while, lawmakers left and right have been saying we've got to get back to pre-COVID spending. How do you get back to pre-COVID spending when you're bringing some of those subsidies that were issued during COVID emergency?